All right, guys, welcome to yet another lecture with JG. Today we're going to be talking about lessons from my last 3 week challenge, and I want to share with you what I learned about the fat loss, the willpower, body signals, and building a sustainable health journey. So, what happened is last week I had a birthday, and before that, I decided to have a pretty aggressive 3 week challenge where I was on 1,000 calorie deficit to be able to accumulate around 21,000 calorie deficit in total. And then if I had to, let me see, so it would be 21,000 by 3,500. That's around 6 pounds. It should be 6 pounds of fat loss on paper, right? But at the end of the day, what we're gonna learn is sometimes like what you write down on paper might not match real life scenarios. Why I decided to do that? I don't know. I just wanted to push myself and see what it really feels like to be pushing your body to your limits. But as you're gonna see, it wasn't a very easy journey. So the core message is that a short challenge can teach discipline, but the real lesson is not how hard you can push. The real lesson is learning what your body can repeat, recover from, and maintain long term. So I've been a coach for many years, and what I've been experiencing right now, it's summer, but obviously during the New Year's, during the winter, like after all the holidays, a lot of women, are super motivated to be doing these challenges. But what we have to understand is that short term, it's a good push, but you have to ask yourself, well, can I sustain that long term? Because it's not like a video game where you just like plug in your laptop and you just like play a video game and you win the game or you lose the game and then you can go back into your regular real life. No, it's like you are living your life. So if you decide to do that challenge, you have to understand that after the challenge ends, you will have to find a way to somehow sustain the results. Because if you won't, then you're just going to go back to your old eating patterns, and then all of those results are going to go to waste. So the challenge was useful, but not because it was perfect. Sometimes a challenge teaches you exactly what to do. Other times it teaches you what not to repeat. So my last 3 week challenge was valuable because it showed me the difference between short-term intensity and long-term sustainability. So as I was saying, on paper, an aggressive deficit looks simple. You have to eat less calories in total, you have to move more, do more cardio, go on more hikes, stay disciplined, and the results should follow. But real life is not lived on paper. Real life includes hunger, stress, sleep, cravings, training, social events, and your relationship with food, right? So, again, like for me as a coach, I was like, okay, well, 1,000 calorie deficit on paper is gonna make a lot of sense. I'm gonna be losing this much fat. But what I didn't take into account was not the discipline, but that I still had to live my life. I still had to get enough sleep. I still had to do the client work and go socialize and go out with my friends and train and overall just feel good. But what happens is when you're in such big deficit, your body doesn't care about like all the social events and training and sleep. It cares about surviving. So when you're having so much less calories, obviously it's going to increase the hunger drive and it's going to decrease the energy drive because your body is just trying to survive. So then what happens is that any kind of like additional activity, it becomes like a chore, right? And that's how your body is trying to preserve the energy. So an interesting fact is that I'm pretty sure everybody has tried low-calorie diets before, and a lot of people say that like, oh, okay, when you try to do like a very low-calorie diet, you're gonna like damage your metabolism. And I wouldn't say that like it comes like, yes, like you're gonna burn less calories when you're on a very low-calorie diet, but it's not because like magically like your metabolism just slows down. It's just because like, think about it, your body tries to preserve energy, and like overall throughout the day, you just might be moving less, you might be fidgeting less, you might be trying to like stand less and like sit down more, or be very unlikely like to go to the social events and stuff like that. And that's what was happening to me. So I was obviously like burning less calories, not because my metabolism magically slowed down, but because every single activity every single additional activity, it looked like a chore because I was just like in such a big deficit. So this lecture is not about glorifying an extreme push. I just want to be super clear. I wouldn't recommend this to anybody at all. I just wanted to like take this as an experiment. It is just about pulling out the lessons that can actually help us build a healthier and more consistent life. So lesson number 1, paper math does not equal real life sustainability. So as I was saying, a big calorie deficit can look great on a spreadsheet, but the body does not experience it as a math. The body experiences it as energy availability, hunger, fatigue, mood, cravings, and recovery. So again, like when we get into a calorie deficit, our body doesn't like that because it wants us to store as much fat as possible and it's going to maximize the chances of survival, right? So when we are in a calorie deficit, it's good. Like when we're in a small or like a moderate calorie deficit, it is okay to feel some kind of hunger because then it just means that your body is signaling that, okay, we're actually tapping into our body fat storage, right? But we don't want to be too hungry. So one of the biggest lessons was that trying to force a very large deficit for weeks straight can become too much. It might work for a short push, but it can also create the exact conditions that make consistency harder later. So fat loss is not just about what theoretically is possible. It is about what can be repeated without eventually rebounding. So yeah, as I was saying, it can be effective on paper, but unrealistic in practice. Why? Because like if you like simply put, like for me, if I feel like shit every single day, all the time, it's just not going to be worth it, right? So the more aggressive the deficit, the more important recovery and hunger management has to become, right? So that's why I say the smaller the deficit, the slower the fat loss might be, but the more sustainable and flexible it might be. Because think about it, let's say if you need 2,000 calories and you decide to eat only 1,000 calories, there's a very small room for error, right? Because if you eat like a couple of cookies, you're already like basically at 1/3 of your calorie goal. As opposed to if you're only at a couple of 100 calorie deficit, even though the fat loss is slower, you're gonna have more energy to do your workouts, to get enough sleep, to be more social, and have some meals that might not even be perfect. So the best plan is not the hardest one, it is the one that you can keep coming back to. Because at the end of the day, we have one body, and it's a pretty good idea to try to treat it in a healthy way long term. So lesson 2, willpower is not a long-term strategy that is sustainable. So as I was saying, willpower can help you start, it can help you push through a tough day, but if the entire plan depends on willpower every hour of the day, then it means that the plan is too fragile because the willpower is going to eventually run out. Okay, so one key realization was that relying on pure willpower while ignoring body signals, it's not discipline, it's usually the beginning of a rebound cycle. That's how a lot of eating disorders can that's how a lot of people can develop eating disorders. Like for me, I had like an eating disorder back in COVID, right? And was it because I was lazy? Was it because I didn't have enough willpower? No, it's actually usually the people who are trying to be the most conscientious, who have most willpower, they can be the people who develop that just because they push their body to such extreme limits, where the body afterwards starts overcompensating and feel like, okay, well, we're not able to do that anymore. We just need to cram in as much food as possible. So real discipline is not pretending that hunger, fatigue, and cravings do not exist. It's very, very difficult to focus on your day-to-day life because like hunger is not like an emotion. It's just like your body is like sending you the signals. So it would be the same thing as like you're in the forest and if you see a bear, like your body is gonna be like sending you all these signals like to fight or flight mode or like go run away, ideally. So you can't just like ignore that. You can't just say, oh, it's just like an emotion. You're gonna be getting eaten by a bear, right? So hunger is a real body signal and it's no joke. So real discipline is building a plan that accounts for all of them. So you don't want to build a plan that only works when motivation is high. You want a plan that also works when motivation is low, because a lot of days you're not going to be feeling like following the plan, right? Because of life circumstances. that are not predictable. So you do not confuse suffering with progress. If you feel if the entire plan feels like suffering all the time, then it means that something needs to change. And you want to use structured routines in your environment so that you need less willpower, not more. So lesson number 3 is hunger is data. It's not weakness. That's what I was saying just a minute ago. So a lot of people treat hunger like a character flaw. You feel like, I should just be tougher. But the hunger is literally information from the body. Be like, hey, like if we don't eat, we're going to starve to death. So sometimes hunger is normal and manageable. Like, let's say, you're not able like to eat a meal like for a few hours. Let's say like you go out to eat and then like you don't have a lot of meal options and all that is available out there is junk food. I really like how one nutrition doctor has mentioned, he's like, well, if you don't eat for a few hours, like you're not gonna die. And if there's no good meals available, you can just like wait a little bit. And then when you get back home, you can like eat a good regular meal. Maybe you're gonna feel a bit more hungry, but you can just eat more of the good food. As opposed to just like every time you feel any kind of even minor hunger, if you just like keep snacking, then it's also not gonna be a great idea. Because at the end of the day, like with snacks, again, they have such a higher calorie density that most of the time they might not even satisfy your hunger. They might even make you even more hungry. Because then like you have a snack that has very high calorie density, and then it makes your body crave more of that snack, crave more of that high calorie dense food. Okay? Nobody binges on like apples or potatoes. Most of the time, including me. Most people, we all know what we binge on. We binge on very high calorie dense food. So other times it is a sign that the deficit is too aggressive, meals are poorly structured, sleep is off, or stress is too high. I also think that sleep is also very, very important when it comes to that, because think about it, like if you need like 7 or 8 hours of sleep, but you like get even just like 6 hours of sleep, even on that day, like I'm pretty sure we've all experienced that hunger is actually gonna be higher. Why? Because obviously the hunger hormones are increased, and on top of that, we just spend 2 hours less sleeping. So the more you sleep, the less you're awake to be hungry. The goal is not to eliminate your hunger completely. The goal is to actually understand it. So as I was saying, mild hunger can be a part of fat loss. But if it becomes so strong where it's difficult to be focusing throughout the day, there could be a couple of reasons, a few reasons. One could be that you're not getting enough sleep, or like you're too stressed out. Another one is that the calorie deficit is too aggressive. We're losing fat way too fast. And then third one could be that the meals are just not satisfying, because let's say if I need like 2,000 calories to maintain my weight, and then I decide to be in a 200 calorie deficit and I start eating 1,800 calories, but if all of those calories are just coming from like peanut butter sandwiches, then even though I'm in a very small calorie deficit, because the meals are so high in calorie density, it also doesn't stretch out my stomach. So then the body signals that like, okay, well, we need to eat more, we're not satisfied. That's how people can reach very high body weight, can accumulate so much fat, is because like if you can like condense all these calories in a very small amount, then you just eat it, a few hours pass by, you eat it again, a few hours pass by, and that's how you can accumulate thousands and thousands of calories. Constant overwhelming hunger is a warning sign, as I was saying, and ignoring body signals for too long usually backfires, because it's not gonna go away. It's not like an emotion, that comes in, like, and then like it passes by, right? The body signals, it's very important. It's very serious, because it's trying to help us to survive. I would compare that almost like to sleep deprivation, right? So let's say if you're on a very strict diet, on a very aggressive calorie deficit, and you're feeling hunger all day long for multiple days and weeks on end, it's the same thing as like as sleep deprivation, right? Because like if you're not sleeping enough, you can push through the day, maybe like for a few weeks, but eventually you're just gonna crash. You're just gonna crash and burn. And yeah, like for me, when I don't get sleep, for example, I just get sick. It's like my body is like, okay, well, you just haven't been getting enough sleep. I just get a cold, because my immune system becomes so week, and just like my body is like, okay, well, you're not giving us sleep, we're gonna take it by force. So hunger is very similar. So lesson 4, volume tricks can help, but they do not fix everything. So high volume foods can be helpful. Potatoes, that's what I've been eating most of the time, right? I was basically just having potatoes for 2 or 3 meals a day. My calorie needs were basically like 26 to 2800 calories. Obviously, like with a physical activity, if I was just like very sedentary, then for me it would be only like 2200 calories, right? And I was eating around 16 to 1800 calories a day, which was 1,000 calorie deficit. So in order to maximize the volume, I was just basically adding a bunch of potatoes because, like, for me at least, they were very satiating. Potatoes are rated as the most satiating food in the world with multiple studies, and especially boiled potatoes. Another thing, again, like, you don't have to, like, guys, you don't have to worry about this, but what I've also understood is that raw potatoes have certain calorie density, but let's say if you bake them for an hour, they lose a bit of water volume, so the calorie density can increase per weight. Why? Because they lose a bit of water. Well, does it mean that, like, you can't eat baked potatoes, you're gonna gain weight from baked potatoes? Absolutely not. But let's say if you want to be like very specific and methodical, then if you boil the potatoes, you're gonna lose the least amount of water volume, or if you microwave them, right? Because you're just not gonna be so long in the oven to lose the water volume. Okay, beans, obviously, those were helping. Vegetables, soups, fruit, oats, and other filling foods can make dieting easier. What else was I using? I was using a bunch of steamed vegetables, because you can literally have a whole bag, a whole pound of frozen broccoli mixed with frozen cauliflower, and whole pound is only 100 calories. Sauerkraut was also great. The only downside is that, like, it's a bit higher in sodium, so you want to watch that. Low calorie sauces, sugar-free sauces, like sugar-free barbecue sauce, that's great. Salsa is also very low in calories. You can just like have multiple tablespoons for like 10 calories, which is nothing, right? It's just like a little bit better than the pasta sauce, because in like some of the pasta sauces, they can add a bit more oil, obviously, to make it taste good. And then, like, the more oil the sauce has, like, the more calorie dense it can be. So I was overall just like mixing potatoes with the beans, or potatoes with the TVP. TVP is texture vegetable protein. That is basically dehydrated soy that you can like literally rehydrate in the microwave with just a little bit of water. You can use taco seasoning, you can use other seasonings, and it's very easy to make. You just microwave it for 1 or 2 minutes in the microwave, like let it sit a little bit, and then I would basically mix the TVP and potatoes and a lot of vegetables. So I was basically trying to maximize the volume, maximize the satiety for the lowest amount of calories possible. So the room for error was very little, because I was in 1,000 calorie deficit. So for me, if I had to pick between a medium-sized potato, which would be like, let's say, around like 100, 110 or 20 calories, and between like an Oreo, of course the potato is going to be way more filling as opposed to Oreo, right? So I had very small amount of room for error in order to make this challenge successful. Now, if I wanted to maintain the weight and I had to eat 2,800 calories of just like potatoes mixed with sauerkraut and mixed with vegetables, I wouldn't be able to do it. Because think about it, if like a pound of baked potatoes is around like 400 to 500 calories, depending on like how long they were baked, then for me, I would need to eat, let's count, let's say like 400 times 6, 7, yeah, I would have to eat basically like 7 pounds of potatoes, which is like physically impossible. Like for me, I would just be like way too bloated. And yeah, it's like, if you want to imagine like this big bag of potatoes from the supermarket, I wouldn't be able to eat that, right? But for that challenge, I had to do it. Okay, so, but another lesson was that volume alone does not solve the problem if total energy is too low for too long. So even though I tried to maximize the volume, and like think about, like, those meals were really big, like the potatoes were very satiating. I'm adding a bunch of vegetables, I'm adding like the sugar-free barbecue sauces and salsa. I'm relying on caffeine and coffee and like diet soda, diet coke and stuff like that, just like to try to keep my stomach extended, right? That way I'm not trying to feel hungry. Even though my stomach was full, my brain was still sending me signals that there's not enough calories. And that's why I think that's a big lesson for a lot of women when they try to become plant-based or vegan. What they do is they come from this rich American diet with plenty of meat that is higher in calories and this processed stuff. And if they try to cut all of that out, cold turkey, and then they just start eating just basic vegetables, not even potatoes, because carbs are the enemy, right? If you start eating just like regular like vegetables and salads and fruit, well, those are usually like 1 to 300 calories per pound, and there's no way in hell that they could be able like to eat 5, 6, 7 pounds of food to sustain their calorie needs. So what happens is they eat so much volume of food, but the calories are super low. It's like one meal is like 200 calories, 300 calories, and you eat 3 meals of those a day. That's maybe max 900 calories. And that's gonna like put you almost like in 1,000 calorie deficit, right? So then what happens is your stomach is extended, right? But you're just not getting enough calories. So that's why a lot of women say, well, I've tried the vegan diet and I was like always bloated, always gassy, and I didn't have enough energy. Well, you didn't have enough energy because you were literally not eating enough calories, right? You're not gonna like, your body knows that if you try to eat salad, like basic lettuce, that is 100 calories a pound, and let's say you need like 1,600 calories to sustain your body weight, is 16 pounds of food. Your body knows that we're gonna be trying to be eating that all day long, and we're still gonna starve to death because it's like literally physically impossible to eat that much, right? So that's why I'm always saying is that we're not just trying to increase the volume of the meals, but the total calories also matter. Because if we get into too big of a calorie deficit, for me, when I was in 1,000 calorie deficit, even though the volume of the meals was really high, I still was feeling hungry. So there's no worse feeling in the world as actually eating the meal, right? And still feeling hungry. Like it doesn't make any sense. Like think about it, like your stomach is stretched out, your stomach feels full, but your body still knows, your body is still sending the signals that it's not enough energy. It's not a good feeling. So then it means that your body is not stupid. Your brain is sending your signals that we're actually not meeting your energy needs for the day. And that's not great, because then what happens is you have to keep relying on those high volume meals, but you're still hungry. You still don't have enough energy, right? Now, if I try to do that 1,000 calorie deficit challenge, eating, let's say, like rice or pasta, or adding processed stuff, or adding peanut butter, or adding like avocados or like fat, which is more calorie dense, even though those are not bad meals, I would have been ravenous. I would have been even more hungry, right? So I'm just like trying to prove a point that, like, again, if it's like a very big calorie deficit, it's not sustainable. And that's why when most people say, well, crash diets fail. Well, of course they fail, because like you're just at such low calories. So you can fill your stomach and still feel mentally unsatisfied if your body is pushing back against the deficit. So that does not mean that volume foods are bad. They are amazing. And that's why usually when I say what we're trying to do with this program is we're trying to be in a moderate calorie deficit, let's say 300 to 500 calories. I would like, some people are able like to push a bit more past the 500 calories, right? So as I'm saying, like, everybody is different, but when we're in a moderate deficit, what we're able to do is, if we're able to add a bunch of high volume meals, then we still have at 10 to 20% flexibility to still be able like to add some of the bad food, some of the treats, and overall your body is going to be feeling fine hunger wise, and you're going to have enough flexibility to be losing fat. But the higher that 10 to 20% number becomes, right? Let's say if you just try to be in a calorie deficit by eating peanut butter sandwiches, it's not going to be enough. It's not going to be enough volume, and you're going to become hungry. Okay, so it means they are tools, they are not magic. So you want to use high volume foods to make the plan easier. Another thing is fiber, right? It's like if you have to be eating such big volumes of food, then obviously your fiber intake is also gonna be going through the roof, and because of that, like you're gonna be feeling bloated all the time. So yes, we need fiber, but if all you're eating are these like volume foods, then it's not gonna be enjoyable journey. So you do not want to use them as a way to force an unsustainable deficit forever, right? And satiety is physical, mental, and emotional, not just stomach fullness. Okay. Lesson number 6: the environment matters more than we want to actually admit. So another major lesson was that certain foods are simply easier for overeat. So for many people, high calorie dense snack foods, nut butters, spreads, ice cream, crackers, chips, cookies, and similar foods are neutral when they are sitting around the house. So again, this is not about being weak, it is about being honest. So what I'm trying to say is that if a food repeatedly triggers overeating, the answer is not to keep testing your willpower, the answer is to design the environment better. So you want to keep trigger foods out of the house or buy them in single portions, right? So, like with an open bag, if you have like a big bag of chips, if you have like Oreos, if you have like Ben and Jerry's. So for me, like right now, after this big challenge, anything would be a trigger food because I've been like in such big deficit. My body is going to be trying to overcompensate by trying to get as many calories as possible. But for a lot of people, I know when you're in a moderate deficit, the craving for those foods might not be as high, especially if you still have a flexibility to include some of them. But on top of that, it's good to try to experiment with yourself in a sense where you have to know which are the trigger foods. So I would say it can be very I say it's different from person to person, right? So for somebody, ice cream could be a big trigger food and they might not be able like to stop eating ice cream. For another person, they could just like eat a couple spoons of ice cream and they could be fine, right? My biggest weakness is usually a chocolate spread, like a peanut butter chocolate spread, and then I use crackers to dip it in that, so it's basically both food items. The chocolate spread is 2,800 calories per pound. The crackers are crazy because the crackers are usually 2,200 calories per pound, so it's so easy to reach. So I mix both of them together and I could just like eat a few. I could eat this much of volume and it would be like 1,000 to like 1,500 calories in one sitting, and I might not even be feeling full, and I might be wondering like what happened. So for me personally, the best thing is, as opposed to like trying to keep the crackers and the chocolate spread in the house and trying to like use my willpower or whatever, the easiest thing is to get just to get the peace of mind and just not get them into the house. Right? So for a lot of people, for other people, it can be like chips, as I was saying, crackers, ice cream. So the best thing is actually just like not keep it in the house. And obviously, like a lot of people that I work with, they have families, and if you say, well, JJ, it's easy for you to say because like we have kids and like we buy the kids snacks, and I'm like, well, you have to ask yourself a difficult question. Why are you buying your kids snacks and junk? Because if you do that, and it's like, oh, your kids, like, they're gonna burn it off. Like, no, because when you have to think about it, if you keep buying them snacks, and God forbid they start experiencing also weight loss problems, then it means that you're actually conditioning them to have a difficult weight loss journey when they grow up. Right? And it's a very difficult thing to ask yourself, right? Like, are you setting up your kids for a successful health journey, or are you actually just like buying them whatever and saying, well, life is short, you have to enjoy it, but then when we grow up we're going to be experiencing the same problems, right? That's the difficult thing. So if you're able to be a good example for them and not buy junk, right? Maybe just have a minimal amount of snacks, but not have like the pantry just like filled out with like all these snacks, and even if it's like healthy snacks, if the calorie density is high, like it doesn't matter if it's like gluten free, sugar free, oil free, this and that, if it's still like highly refined, it's still gonna be similar calorie density, which can be like over 2000 calories per pound. And then people are gonna cram that food in more. As I was saying, like with our ancestors, they were cramming in meat that were like 1,000 calories per pound. So basically, we were conditioned to cram in that food when food wasn't available. So right now, in the normal world, any kind of food that we buy that is going to be processed is going to be higher calorie density than the meat, which means that our body knows it and is going to try to cram as many calories as possible. Okay, so you do not want to rely on, I will just have a little, if history shows that does not work well. Like, I'm a coach and I'm supposed to have golden willpower, and unfortunately, it doesn't even work with me. If I start eating ice cream, like if I have a pint of Ben and Jerry's, I might start eating like a little bit and a little bit and a little bit, and by the time I know, 15 minutes have passed by and the whole pint is gone, right? Because it is normal. It is normal for us to cram in that food because it's such a rich food. It overwhelms our taste receptors. Yeah, it's all good. Yeah, of course. And basically, as I was saying, it's gonna overwhelm our taste receptors, and then on top of that, we are gonna be predispositioned to cram as much of that food as possible, right? So if you see that you don't do well with a certain food, whether it be ice cream or chips or crackers, just don't have it in the house, and it's gonna make your weight loss journey way easier. So another thing is you want to make the easy choice that supports your goals. So like if your environment is surrounded by fruits and vegetables, and you have meals that you have made beforehand, then of course it's gonna be way easier for you to stick with the plan. As opposed to the worst case scenario would be you come back from work after a long day at work, and then you see that you're pretty hungry, right? And then you come back at the house, you go to the house, and then there's no food available, and it's only like the snacks. So of course you can like overeat on snacks very easily, as opposed to if you already have some meals that are pre-made, right? Or like once like you're heating up the meal, and then maybe you can have an apple or a banana while you're waiting, and then you have your regular meal, and it's gonna save you so many calories from excessively snacking. Okay. Lesson number 6 is a short challenge can build confidence, but it should not become your lifestyle. So challenges can be useful because they create focus. They can show you that you are capable of committing, following through, and doing hard things. But a challenge is not supposed to be your forever plan. That's what it's called, a challenge. So if a plan only works for 21 days because you are white knuckling through it, then it is not a lifestyle, it is a sprint. And eventually you're gonna get out of breath. So you want to use challenges for lessons, momentum, and awareness. And I want to emphasize this again. I wouldn't recommend anybody in their right mind to do that. It's like same thing as somebody like testing out like a new medicine, or like going and like doing a scientific experiment, right? Like I wouldn't recommend doing that because it can end up badly, right? It's like I'm a coach and I'm supposed to like deal with it easily, but also hasn't been, it's probably like one of the hardest things I've done in my life, right? So you do not want to confuse short-term intensity with long-term identity, right? Because it's like, if you can only sustain for a very short amount of time and then like you fail, it doesn't mean that you're, as an individual, you're a failure. It just means that like that plan wasn't set up to last long term. And then after the challenge, you want to transition back into a routine that you can actually live with. So JJ, even though he's a coach, I couldn't live off of just like potatoes for all my life, right? I could say that like, hey, I'm just gonna be eating whole foods, but even for me, that is not realistic, because I have decided to make a choice that like, yes, I am vegan, right? And how do I say, I still want to go out there and like enjoy some vegan donuts, and then I enjoy some vegan burgers and like some vegan junk food, right? Because I just want to try it out, and I just want it to be social. Who knows, maybe like 20 years from now, maybe my opinion is going to change. Okay, lesson number 7, maintenance is not failure. So one of the most mature lessons in a fitness journey is realizing that the leanest possible version of you is not always the healthiest or most sustainable version of you. So there is a difference between a look you can achieve briefly and a lifestyle you can maintain comfortably. So I want to emphasize that this goes not just like for this is not for you if you're trying like to get to a healthy body weight. Like getting to a healthy body weight is awesome. This is a point I'm trying to make for people who are trying like to get in a fitness model looking shape or like a bikini model looking shape, like something like like getting shredded abs and like stuff like that. I know this is not most people's goal, but for those who do decide to do that, it's gonna come with a lot of sacrifices. And most people, even the competitors, they're not able to sustain it. They're able like to get ready for the show, right, by following a very strict plan. But afterwards, when they're in the off season, their weight balloons back up because it's just like very unsustainable, and we haven't been made as humans to be like trying to be as lean as possible. That's just not realistic. So maintaining a healthy body weight, training consistently, having good energy, and not obsessing about food is not failure. That is success. So the goal is not to always push lower and lower. A sustainable body is better than a temporary extreme body, and the right goal should support your life, not consume it. I always keep saying that fitness should make our lives better. It shouldn't make our lives difficult, right? It should be something that actually adds up to your life, not tries to take it away. Because a lot of people, when they try to be on a fitness journey, they try like to make up so many rules, right? Like I have to be doing 5 hours of cardio, I have to be doing very strict workouts, I have to be on this very strict diet, and it makes their life miserable. We have to ask ourselves a question: how can we use fitness to add up to the life? How can we do the workouts that we actually look forward to and that we enjoy? How can we modify the meals that, like, yes, we're trying to make them healthier, but on top of that, we also have some flexibility to be able to go out with friends, with family, and eat a meal that, even though it might not be ideal, we would still be able to feel good about it, and it would not sabotage the results. Because sabotaging results comes from guilt. We're like, okay, I shouldn't be doing this, I shouldn't be doing that, and then over time it can accumulate, and you can just like spiral out of control and be like, why am I doing even that in the first place? What's even the reason of doing that, which is not good. Lesson 8, after a slip, do not punish, you have to resume. This again has to do with guilt. So aggressive dieting often creates an emotional pattern. You slip, you feel guilty, then you try to compensate with an even harder restriction. So that is how people get stuck in the restrict, binge, restrict cycle. And that's why it's very good to have a coach who's gonna point it out. And even though I'm a coach, I would also benefit from having somebody from the side, because I just think that it has to do with somebody else being able like to look at it from the side and giving you a bit more grace and giving you some feedback, because we as humans, we tend to be very hard on ourselves and we tend to punish ourselves, right? As I was saying, like 74% of Americans are overweight or obese, but it's not because like they're lazy and like they're unmotivated and they don't want to do it. I'm pretty sure that a big part of them have tried a bunch of methods, but those methods were just not sustainable. Right? Like statistics show that 95% of diets fail, and there is a reason behind that. So the better response is simple: resume normal habits as quickly as possible if you fail, because everybody fails. It is human nature to fail, but then the question is, what are you going to do after that failure? Are you going to turn it into a lesson, or are you going to turn it into this restrictive cycle? So you do not skip meals to make up for overeating. You do not turn one bad day into one bad week, and you do not restart from zero. You want to continue from where you are. Another thing that I learned is on this challenge is that, unfortunately, if we, let's say, overeat on like 2,000 calories, maybe the next day the hunger is gonna be reduced, so you can try to have less calories, maybe like skip breakfast and have a regular lunch and dinner. For some people who are like extremely disciplined, they could try like fasting for the whole day. I've tried that too, and I would say it can be like mixed results, right? If you're somebody who, deals with extreme like hunger or like energy levels go down a lot, I wouldn't recommend that. But I would say there's a very short window where you can try to like account for those additional calories when you overeat. But the day afterwards, so let's say like Sunday you overate on calories, on Monday you have this short window to like push back a bit on the calories, right? And then like use the calories from the previous day. But then on Tuesday, what I have learned from this challenge is that the hunger is gonna go back into the baseline. And if you're gonna be trying to restrict calories even more, or like try to out exercise the excess calories from Sunday on Tuesday, it can backfire very easily. Why? Because like most of that food was already digested and it was already been put into the fat stores, right? So that's the and it makes sense when you think from an evolutionary perspective, because our body, like if we keep overeating, is gonna keep storing the fat. But if we're gonna be trying to go on these like very negative restrictive calorie diets to try to account for that, the body is going to push back and is going to increase the hunger. So if we had one bad day, the best thing is the next day start from zero, right? And just go back to your regular plan, as opposed to trying to almost undo the calorie surplus from the past day, right? Because then the hunger is gonna kick in and the chances of overeating next time are gonna dramatically go up. Lesson number 9, the best fat loss plan protects your future self. So a good plan should not just create weight loss, it should protect the person you are becoming. So that means that the plan should protect your relationship with food, your energy, your workouts, your sleep, and your ability to keep going. So as I was saying, it should make your life better, it shouldn't make your life worse. So if a plan gets you results but leaves you more likely to binge, quit, or fear food, it is not the best plan for your long-term journey. That's why a lot of people say, oh, you gotta like cut out carbs and cut out this and make this super restrictive if you're not able to sustain it long-term. So good fat loss should make you more confident, not more chaotic. The plan should help you trust yourself more, not less. And the goal is not just to lose weight, the goal is to become someone who can maintain the results. And there's some questions that you can actually ask after this lecture. You can sit down and take some notes. Is instead of asking how hard can I push, you have to ask yourself, how can I repeat consistently? Again, using the analogy between the sprint and between the marathon, right? Like, so fat loss is more like a marathon, it's not a sprint, right? How fast can I lose the weight? Instead of that, you want to say, how can I maintain the behaviors that got me there? Because you want to keep the weight off. Instead of asking, why am I hungry? You have to ask yourself, is this normal hunger or a sign that my plan needs adjusting? So it's very easy, like at nighttime, especially when the willpower is the lowest. If you're feeling hungry, you have to ask yourself, well, can I eat an apple right now? And if you're like, yes, I want to have an apple, then it means you're hungry. But you're like, apple doesn't sound good, but like some crackers or ice cream sounds better. Then it means that you're not necessarily hungry, you're just craving something, or you're bored and you just want like to use the food to make yourself feel better. Instead of asking, how do I punish myself after overeating, you have to ask yourself, how do I resume without drama, which most of the time means like you just go back onto your regular plan, right? It might take a little bit more time to undo the damage, but it's going to be way better and more sustainable, as opposed to like trying to like fast or like do hours of cardio to try to undo the damage. Instead of asking, how do I become more disciplined, you have to ask yourself, how do I design my environment so discipline is easier, right? So again, if you're surrounded by a lot of processed stuff and snacks, it's gonna require a lot of willpower for you to stay on this journey, which is not gonna be sustainable. So practical action plan, here's the simple framework I would take from this challenge and apply going forward. That choose a deficit that supports consistency instead of forcing the biggest possible deficit, right? As I was saying, if we're able to be in a moderate calorie deficit, 300 to 500 calories a day, and I usually say, like with most of our clients, we found that like 1 pound of fat loss a week is usually the most sustainable. Some people are able like to push beyond that, but this is way better because every single pound that you're losing, you know that you're gonna be able to keep it off. So I would rather do that as opposed to try like to push faster, but then if you start feeling worse and you have less energy, you have more hunger, you have more cravings for the food, you're thinking about food all day long, then I don't think that the more aggressive pace is actually worth it, right? On this journey, our brain is always running this cost benefit analysis, right? Like, what we're doing, is it actually worth it, right? And like for most people it is, but when we try to push it faster, it just doesn't become worth it because there's too many negative side effects. You want to keep meals built around filling foods, but you also want to make sure that the plan is not so low in calories that the hunger becomes overwhelming. So again, as I was saying, moderate calorie deficit. You want to remove or limit trigger foods instead of repeatedly testing willpower. So if you know that in the past 3 years, every single time you've had ice cream, you finished the whole pint, then of course it would be a good idea not to have it in the house, right? You can just like, a better approach would be like to just go out somewhere, and then like you can order ice cream there. They're gonna pre-measure 1 to 2 scoops and you just have it and you can enjoy it, right? You want to use caffeine, training, and activity as tools. You don't want to, not as ways to mask under recovery, right? So let's say if you're somebody who gets tired and doesn't get enough sleep and then you keep drinking more and more coffee, it's not gonna be sustainable. Or if you're somebody who, let's say, overeats and the next day you try to like do 3 hours of cardio, again, it's not gonna be sustainable. We want to use them as tools, not as something to rely on for the mistakes that we've made before. Okay, you want to judge the progress by consistency, energy, recovery, and behavior, not just the scale. And when you slip, you want to return to normal at the next meal instead of trying to compensate. Okay, and the closing message is the biggest lesson from the challenge was not I need to be more extreme. The biggest lesson was I need to build a plan I can respect, repeat, and recover from. And short-term challenges can teach us a lot, but long-term success comes from learning how to listen to your body, manage the environment, stay consistent, and avoid turning every goal into a battle of willpower. And some of my ending thoughts, I would say, is that you do not need to prove that you can suffer. You need to prove that you can keep showing up in a way that supports your health for the rest of your life. Okay, and the lesson is that not try to never push yourself, right? But the lesson is to push intelligently. So we want to work smart, not work hard. So the best plan is not the one that looks most impressive for 3 weeks. The best plan is the one that helps you lose fat, maintain your sanity, and keep the results long after the challenge ends. Because as I was saying, it's not like a video game that you can turn on, try like to do as much as you can, and then you can turn off. It's not like a competition, like a CrossFit competition where you go out all out for like 3 hours and then like afterwards like you just do whatever you want, right? No, it doesn't work that way. You eat meals every day, you sleep every day, you do the workouts every day, so you want to make sure that it's built around something that you actually enjoy and you can look forward to, not to make yourself miserable. Like, so for me, I learned a lot from this challenge, and I would say personally, I don't think I would ever repeat it ever again. Why? Because again, I tried like to condense the fat loss in the least amount of time possible, and it came with a lot of sacrifices, which means that my energy was impacted negatively, my workout suffered, my sleep suffered, I was really hungry all day long, I was thinking about food all day long, right? So all of those were negative side effects. And what did I gain in return? A six-pack, right? Most of the time it's not worth it. That's why a lot of people on Instagram create unrealistic body image expectations, and then other people look at that and they think this is how they should be. No, they shouldn't be that way, A healthy body weight is not where you have a six-pack. A healthy body weight is where you're looking and feeling your best, but it doesn't have to be fitness competitor level, right? Because even fitness competitors themselves, they also develop eating disorders. They have to make a lot of sacrifices, and most of them are not able to sustain it. All right. So this was a bit of a longer lesson.